Welcome to the Growth Engine podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Amie Stankiste, Chief Marketing Officer at LSEG. With over a year at the helm of LSEG's marketing, Amie has been the force behind a transformative strategy for both the parent brand and sub-brands, driving digital optimization and sales pipeline generation. Prior to LSEG, Amie's expertise in multi-channel and B2B marketing strategies propelled growth at Ion, S&P and Thomson Reuters. There, she led award-winning teams, implemented industry-leading technology, and championed a customer-focused marketing approach across multi-billion-dollar businesses. Today, she's here to share her insights on leading marketing functions, executing large-scale projects, and driving innovation within the financial services industry. Amie, welcome to the Growth Engine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Amie, reflecting on your rich history in the industry, what experiences sort of led you to feel and kind of led you to this part and also be prepared to take on the role of CMO at LSEG?
Yeah, so I've been in financial services marketing on the B2B side for about 20 years now, which I can't actually believe, but there's obviously been various phases of my career that have led me to this point, which has been quite the journey when I reflect on that. And I think some of the sort of key areas that I would really pull out of that journey would be things like managing teams. That's been a really important growth area of mine. So if I look back at the various companies I've worked for, I think that really started around the Dow Jones era, where I took on a larger team and it was a more kind of geographically spread team as well. So since the time at Dow Jones, I've definitely stepped into bigger and bigger sort of management roles and sort of reflecting on those teams, and the development and the growth and the success of those teams has been absolutely sort of critical as I've sort of progressed through my career. I would also say that one of the key moments as well was moving from more regional based marketing to global. And that's quite a daunting thing to take on. When you're sort of used to certain regions, everybody's comfortable in their home market, in their domestic market. But actually, when you then really expand your remit and expand your coverage into other countries and continents, you've got to start to think quite differently. So when I've moved, for example, to Thomson Reuters, that's when I really moved from a more EMEA or Europe-based role to much more global. And in that move, it was really trying to manage my own time. You're getting on early with the APAC region, maybe finishing a bit later on the Americas side, and then making your day work for those different teams, respecting different cultures, respecting different time zones, making sure that you're bringing teams together, making them feel like they belong and that they're part of something bigger, but each area is important and relevant in itself as well. I'm really reflecting that for the whole company. Another area I'd really think is important, and I reflect on for a lot of marketers, and especially in the B2B space, is around that trade-off or that balance between demand-based sort of marketing and brand marketing. And there's a lot of conversations that go on about, budget allocation and time and resource allocation to those two disciplines. And when I was at S&P Global, I definitely found that my experience in the demand side was, of course, incredibly important, incredibly useful, being a really commercially minded marketer. But then to add on to that, the importance of brand and that longer term reputation and that build of brand in the industry and the wider world, that became more to the forefront in that role as well. So that's been quite a big one. And then I would say just influencing at the C-suite. So that's been very important as well. So thinking about your stakeholders across large, complex global businesses, you've got to be very mindful of the different needs of the business and the different objectives in the business as well, and being able to align marketing goals to those objectives to make sure that you're really driving that success for the business. And it makes sense for the C-suite as well, because sometimes marketing, we can talk in our own language, in our own jargon. And so you've got to bring it back to what is the company actually trying to achieve and how is the marketing function actually adding into that as well. And then I'd say lastly, bringing it back to LSEG, adding all of that together, plus I would say now being in a fully centralized function, it's that balance between the corporate group level that we kind of really focus on at the LSEG group level, and then the importance of the divisions that make up the group. So we have teams that are more aligned to the group level, the horizontal at the corporate level, and then you have vertically aligned teams that are at the divisional level. And balancing again the needs of those different parts of the business and making sure that it's all coming together in a holistic way that the marketing team understands and the business understands, then that's been crucially important as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you. LSEG then, let's focus in on that.
Yeah.
You've been in the role now just over a year, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
It's been a busy year, as we're about to find out. If we go back almost to the beginning, when you took on the role, what challenges were you brought in to tackle? Obviously, big role, global CMO. There must have been some underlying challenge that they were like, right, we need something sorting here. I'm interested to know what that was, and then how did you approach that, and what did that mean was on the list for year one?
Yeah, not just one challenge, not just one opportunity. I'm going to reframe it to an opportunity. So LSEG has gone through a big period of integration and then transformation. So a few years ago, LSEG bought Refinitiv, which is an incredibly large company, and there was a big job at hand to integrate those two businesses. I'm massively simplifying this, but just think of a big integration project. There were other acquisitions as well, and a lot of ambitious and pretty enormous growth in the business as well. So the few things on the list, just a few small things, was a brand transformation, which was simplifying the brand, rebranding the entire group, and launching the first real group brand campaign globally. So that was the first one. Aligned to that is a digital transformation. So with all of those companies coming together and the big growth of the business, it was about the websites, and I mean, again, massively simplifying, but the technology that sits under the marketing function and the websites that we obviously go out to market with, and that's our digital shop front, was bringing all of those websites together and simplifying that customer experience and really aligning to that brand experience that we're also transforming as well. With that was also a restructure of the marketing function. So that was really the first job. There'd been...
How many are in there in your team?
So in my team, it's around 250 now.
Wow.
That's globally.
A big job to restructure that just in itself. And that was part one.
That was part one. And the first part of the team restructure was my leadership team. So I needed to build a really strong, robust leadership team that could work hand in hand, like I said, at the corporate group level, but also at the divisional level, to make sure that we were meeting all of those different business needs. So yeah, the team restructure was quite a big deal. And then within that, I would say building the relationships and the reputation of marketing within the business was really important as well. So making people understand marketing, why we were there, what the value is, and how to work with us in the best possible way to get the best outcomes out of the team as well. And then not to forget efficiencies and governance. And we don't talk about this a lot, I don't think, in marketing, but it's sort of getting your house in order, making sure that you are being fiscally responsible, that you're being very transparent with how you're investing marketing budget, that you're being very mindful of showcasing ROI, that metrics are very clear, and that the team understands that there are certain responsibilities and efficiencies we're trying to drive from a cost and margin perspective as well, that again is talking the business language. So we're trying to drive revenue on one hand, but we also need to be really responsible with our spend at the same time.
That's an interesting point, because that sounds like it. Listening to all of these points, they sound like they almost ladder and support each other. But so you talk about efficiency and governance, but just before that, you mentioned about driving and starting to almost educate the business of the value of marketing. And those, to me, sound like they go hand in hand, because you can't do one without proving the other.
Absolutely.
And presumably setting your senior leadership team in place, you needed to kind of say, right, bang the drum here. This is how we're going to run marketing. We've got this job to do within the business, all of which on their own sound like they would take a year. You tackling 3 of those at once.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I'm still here.
Yeah, brilliant. And still smiling. So I can't wait to hear how it's all gone. When you start to, as I say, have the senior leadership team, put this in place about, okay, we're running marketing like this, we need to prove this into the business. Was that not there already within LSEG? Did it not have that level of rigor, shall we say, in order to drive the significant transformation that we're talking about?
As you think about LSEG's journey, we brought a lot of different disparate marketing teams together that were actually structured in very different ways and had quite different roles within the businesses that they came from. Bringing the marketing team together as a group, it was incredibly important that we restructured in a way that really does fit the needs of the group going forward and the divisions within. So it was basically just a matter of sort of restructuring, tidying things up, putting some rigor in place in some of those teams that maybe had been a bit more disparate in terms of their focuses. So making sure everybody's super focused, knows the direction of travel, and is comfortable in their roles in terms of what they're there to do and there to deliver.
Makes sense. And I guess businesses at the size of LSEG are in constant evolution. They constantly change. So you need to be keeping an eye on what the changing needs of the business
and building that flex into the team and being able to move and be agile and change things at speed whilst also keeping the sort of big strategic goals in mind is really important.
Yes, yeah. Let's go back to some of the big activity that you've been focusing on. I'm fascinated in what you're saying again at the beginning of how you as a leader taking on this role and how you start to transform from thinking from being regional to global. You're now working at LSEG across the execution of this large global marketing campaign. Can you talk us through that execution, what that actually involved?
I'll try and keep it brief as well, because I could be here
I love
all
a
day.
bit of detail. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. So if we take a step back as to the job at hand, so LSEG as a brand is not as well known or has not been as well known in the past. LSEG stands for London Stock Exchange Group. The issue within that name is that the London Stock Exchange is the first part of that name. So there is a misperception that we are only a stock exchange and that we're only based in London. So the job of the LSEG brand campaign was to really kind of myth bust and really sort of reposition LSEG as a group and what we are here to do in the world in terms of serving our customers and our stakeholders and the success that we're trying to build across the business. And so when we thought about how do we build a creative concept together to kind of take on some of those myths that are sort of out in the market and build a campaign that kind of rebuffs those, but in a way that's got some warmth behind it, it's got some personality behind it, and it actually injects a little bit of intelligent wit, which are all can feel quite risky in a brand campaign. But we briefed an agency and we also said to them, we don't just want to cut through in B2B financial services here. We want something that really, really stands out in a B2C world, really, because we don't want to put a benchmark in place that might end up with us looking and sounding like a lot of other big global companies in our industry. So we decided to take some risks with the creative, and that was a really interesting process in that we had the group CEO was very bought in and involved from the start. And so bringing him on that journey was an interesting experience as well, I'm sure, for him as well as all of us. And getting him comfortable with us, pushing the boundaries slightly creatively and saying, okay, well, we're going to do something quite different that we've never, ever done before. And this is how we want to kind of position ourselves and be perceived in the market. So that was incredibly difficult. But then when we saw the end result and the reaction we got actually to the end result was phenomenal. And I think most of our exco and our senior leaders were, I think the words were pleasantly surprised, because I think everybody just didn't know how that was going to go. And you never do.
Very bold, isn't it? Campaign. It's bold of the business. And must have been, I mean, obviously you had huge belief in it, otherwise you wouldn't have instigated, but it must have been a relief as well.
It was a huge relief on the day. And then, within a week, we just started to see this momentum build. And what we'd actually done on the launch day, the day before the launch, was an internal launch called a Super Stream event, which was almost like this enormous global town hall that kind of followed the sun in a lot of our major global centers around the world. And we launched the campaign within that kind of superstream environment, which involved all 25,000 people that work in our group.
Wow.
So essentially, we were kind of trying to make brand champions and brand ambassadors out of all 25,000 people around the world. So they really felt like, again, it belonged to them. They were part of it, and it was something to be excited about. And so I think that's what really helped to drive the momentum behind it. It was all, firstly, it was kind of the slight surprise of the positioning that we'd taken and the creative concept. But then once they'd sort of accepted the surprise of, oh, that's a bit different, then people were so excited and they were just out there in the market, just driving the momentum. Because I mean, we executed across 15 major markets around the world. We went out in 5 different languages, so we had to translate absolutely everything. But obviously, that's really important for our global audience. And we went out across a plethora of different channels. You know, the big out-of-home plays taking over sort of airports and stations in these major cities around the world. We took over London taxis, trams in Hong Kong. We were on TV, which was a first, and we sponsored podcasts, and also obviously a lot of digital, really targeted programmatic kind of buying as well. But across all of those, going back to that internal sort of build of excitement, because we did a lot out in the markets in these different cities, we had people just very naturally sharing. So they'd go and take a photograph with the campaign in situ and share it on social media. So we had this huge momentum just started building.
Yeah,
And that
almost like a tidal wave that started to follow the
exactly,
launch.
going viral
Yeah,
really. But it
yeah,
was our own
brilliant.
people that were really driving that, and the pride that came across and the excitement was phenomenal. So
I love
we were
that.
incredibly excited. And our little 1-minute video that was our kind of hero film, at the last count at the end of last year, I think it's been viewed 88 million times now.
Goodness
And
me.
so for B2B video in financial services, I don't think that's a normal
That's
result.
phenomenal.
So we were just so excited. It was being shared just so much because people were quite surprised. And the one thing that really sticks with me that the senior leaders were very kind of proud of, everybody was saying, my family and friends have seen this and they love it.
Yeah,
And they love it. And so it just felt like this sort of showing of sort of love and affection for LSEG as this newly
brilliant.
positioned group in the world.
What a
Yeah.
wonderful story. I love the fact that you sort of call it the global super stream.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that, how you've created 25,000
Yeah.
champions, more than that by the sounds of it, because all the
Yeah.
families are now
Yeah.
starting supporting and go, oh, I know what
Yeah.
you do now. And,
Yes, that's exactly it. Exactly it. Yeah. So people didn't feel like they had to explain every time because it's quite complex what we all do.
that feeling of pride that you've
Yeah.
created within all of the employees that work there. And then
Mm.
what was that planned? Was that a pleasant surprise off the back of it? Did you?
I mean, we of course worked hand in hand with our fabulous internal comms team,
Yeah.
who did a phenomenal job delivering the super stream, and I'd be remiss to not mention them. And we definitely wanted that internal engagement. I mean, that was the design of doing that the day before we went live
Yeah.
externally. I don't think we knew exactly how big that would get.
Yeah.
And so I think the combination of doing the super stream launch, getting everybody really excited, having leaders in the different geographies around the world, getting everybody involved, and then having the bigger out of home sort of quite
Mm,
physical campaign presence, those two things allowed people to feel the excitement, but then actually go and do something about
yeah.
it. And in a world of sharing and liking and social media, that's what people want to do. They kind of want to share with
Yeah.
their own communities and their own networks. And so we kind of put the two things together. I think we built them both intentionally, but the kind of end result of both coming together, the sort of synergy you got out of that was quite phenomenal, really.
You talked about the digital estate. You
Yes.
talked about how that's been transformed, and again, huge job. You've got multiple platforms there that you're
Yeah.
touching. What's the impact? How do you actually measure that? What's from a point of view, from a impact from the brand perception point, but also customer experience? What can you tell us around that?
So yeah, again, taking a step back, bringing those websites together was about simplifying the journey for our customers. Because if you imagine across LSEG as a group, we had many, many separate websites, completely separate, with a totally different experience and a completely different look and feel. So the first job was to bring them all together onto lseg.com and to a shared platform as well. Because again, the journeys were all disparate and disjointed, and the poor teams that have to report on all of these areas and measure had to do it across many different kind of disparate sites and technology stacks. So bringing that together onto lseg.com was super, super important. And what that's allowed us to do is simplify the business in terms of making sure that however anybody lands on lseg.com, their needs can be met. I.e., if they're looking for one of our sub brands, for example, FTSE Russell or the London Stock Exchange, they can very easily navigate there. So that's
Okay.
a super, super simple journey for them.
It's almost
But
a rule that you set it out by.
exactly, it's like this is sort of our business, but if you're looking for these sub brands, they're there, very easy to find on that sort of big top navigation. But of course, being much, really focused on customer centricity, it's about also allowing people to navigate based on their job role, their company type. What are they actually looking for? And making sure that we're building on technology that's allowing us to get to know our customers much, much better, and also then build journeys for them and personalize content for them and the experience for them that makes everything easier and simpler. Now, on the flip side, it also makes it easier to measure because everything's in one place, everything's on one stack. The other thing to say is that with old websites can come old legacy technology, and obviously, as a regulated firm and a systemically important firm, we can't have sort of risks and cybersecurity, and we've got to build that resilience and robustness into our digital capabilities as well. So that's a kind of absolute must do as well. So seeing the importance on that is really, really important. But also, when you're saying about measuring, there's a lot of measurement here that is actually about legacy cost, and it's taking legacy cost out of the business and setting the business up for much, much more efficient investment in the future, rather than investing across many different things that are disconnected. We're on one journey, one tech stack, and that's our future. So it's an important measure.
As well as designing the digital transformation, and part of this was changing the underlying tech stack.
Yeah.
As well.
Building on the best that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just check. You're working to still 365 days in a year, like all of us.
I've got a fantastic team.
Goodness me.
That's all I will say.
Yeah. So that's huge. I mean, I've seen organizations that will just struggle to do that across multiple years, and
Yeah.
doing a number of big things simultaneously.
Yeah. It's been a lot, and being able to celebrate those milestones has been really important because it's hard work. It's hard. I mean, it's a great team, but it's all hands on deck all the time, and a huge heavy lift for a lot of people and a lot of teams, and that is so appreciated across the group. So it's really important that we keep that level of kind of team spirit and motivation, and like I say, celebrating those milestones when we hit them is really important. It's usually celebrate and move on to the next quite quickly, but it's kind of taking a moment to say this is important. Yeah.
So I suspect that you need, in order to have that level of high performance, which and achieve the volume of activity that you're setting the drumbeat on, you need to keep a very supportive, effective team environment, especially when you're going through such speed of change. How do you go about managing a team of that scale and providing that support?
Yeah, and again, it's quite a disparate team in that I think we're in over 20 countries around the world as well. So, lots of locations, lots of languages, lots of cultures across the team. If I think again back to the sort of not first day, but, first few weeks and really setting the expectations of the team, I actually launched something we called the 8 ambitions of the team. And that was something that became very repetitive over the last year or so. I won't go through all 8 ambitions, but it's things like we are customer centric, we are one team, we are strategic, we simplify, we collaborate, quite simple things, but actually what we could do is then use our team meetings, the town hall type meetings, the roundtables that we do, to bring those to life in lots of different ways and showcase what good looks like.
Yeah.
So on top of those kind of 8 ambitions of the team, we really started to focus on what we call raising the bar. So the program across across everything across the year is raising the bar. And so you can kind of take each one of those and find amazing examples of those from across the team. And they're not always the big shiny campaigns that have gone to, they're of course really important, but there's a huge amount of work that goes on in the operational side of things and in the efficiency driving side of things and in the automation side of things that not everybody gets to see all the time. So we put a call out, obviously, across our sort of managers and our leaders across the team to say it's your job to shine a light in those parts of the team that are important, and showing those examples of how we're raising the bar across the team just naturally starts to get this sort of feeling of, oh, I want to be spotlighted, or I can see what that person's doing. I could take that example and use it in my part of the function as well. So that was quite a sort of softer thing to do at the start, but it sort of felt quite important. And the sort of momentum we built on the back of that has been great. And I would say, though, that being a leader of a sort of disparate global team, you do need to have a really strong operating rhythm and be very consistent and repetitive, actually. So setting up very clearly an operating rhythm of monthly town halls, monthly directors calls, my leadership team meetings, roundtables in different regions, one-to-ones with different levels in the team, making sure that very simple operating rhythm is in place and is respected.
Yeah.
We all know, we've all had leaders in the past, something just gets cancelled at the last minute, or it's not important anymore, or they move on to something different. And I just really believe that you've got to, it's almost the foundations that cannot change. And then from those foundations, you can build that expectation, you can build the ambition, and start to raise the bar across everything you're doing, and celebrate those successes. So there's definitely two sides of it.
I love that sort of setting the rhythm. Here's the meeting rhythm, essentially.
Yeah.
Here's how we're going to hold
And
ourselves
communications
accountable.
as well on top of those meetings, of course.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the shining the light into the areas and giving the team leaders responsibility to shine the light. I love that as
Yeah.
well, because those projects for me almost sound like the scaffolding that
Yeah.
underpins all of the grander ambitions, like
Yeah.
the global execution of the campaign. But
Yeah.
you couldn't have that without all of the other BAU stuff aligned and supporting in general the whole business. So
Yeah.
it's no, it's fabulous. So that sounds like a busy year. Congratulations
Thank you.
for the success that you've had
Yeah.
on year one. What does I'm always scared to ask. What's in store next? What's, when you start to look to the future, what's on the to-do list for you and LSEG?
Brand continues to be really, really important, because you can't really just go to market with a big brand campaign and then go quiet in the market. So we continue our investment into brand. We're looking at our brand foundations. And what I mean by that is the parent brand outside of the campaign last year. It's kind of, what does the 2, 3, 5-year vision look like for the brand, and really building on that and starting to get the buy-in and understand that journey and what that investment might look like over the next few years. The digital transformation, we've kind of got the foundations now in terms of that customer experience and the integration of the technology, and we're on the kind of right technology stack now. And so it's about building that kind of personalization at scale, understanding how we're going to use customer data platform to really get to know our customers more, profile them more, and be able to give them what they need when they need it. That's quite a huge ask across the different divisions that we have across our business, because we serve lots of different types of customers in lots of different ways. But what we try and do is simplify the journey. And then we have, obviously very large accounts that are very important to us as well. The sort of highest value accounts that we need to have that view across the entire group for that account to be able to personalize from an account-based marketing standpoint, which I haven't mentioned yet. We have a really great ABM function in the team that works really closely with those sort of global relationship managers of those big accounts. And that's a good example of how customer data and building personalization and raising the bar of that experience of that customer is really important, so they can see the full value of LSEG, that we can deliver the full value of everything that we have to offer into that account. Again, if you take the converse of that, in the past, a very disparate group all doing different things feels very different, very hard to navigate. So when you bring it all together, it's just delivering that customer experience, and this year is about really raising the bar for that. The other thing that is incredibly important is our sub-brands. So I've mentioned a couple, but we have 6 distinct sub-brands in the market, and these are incredible businesses in themselves. So, for example, we have London Stock Exchange, we have FTSE Russell. They are very well-known brands in themselves. We also have a new sub-brand that we have called LSEG Data Analytics, or DNA for short. That is the rebrand of the Refinitiv business, which was a multi-billion-dollar business, or multi-billion-pound business that was bought by LSEG a few years ago. So launching these new sub-brands with a very new kind of look and feel that's very LSEG is super important now as well. So across those sub-brands, we're taking those into market, making sure that they are highly relevant, highly targeted to the audiences they serve, but that they are also complemented by the group brand of LSEG as well. So it's about simplifying the business for our customers.
So is that almost 7 individual global brand campaigns that you're embarking on, as well as
yes and no, in that we are going to market with those campaigns, but we are finding the thread. And the reason we did the rebrand last year, so on top of the campaign, which we talked about, we rebranded the whole group, and we rebranded thousands and thousands of touch points across every business, so they look and feel and sound much more consistent and much more related in terms of the association with each other and the association with the parent brand. One good example of that is one of our sub-brands is called LSEG FX, and this is a amalgamation of many different foreign exchange capabilities across that asset class that LSEG owns. And again, for customers, it's quite hard to knit that together and understand everything that we did in the FX space. So the LSEG FX sub-brand is simplifying that, bringing it all into one sub-brand, and really laying out that we are pre-trade, at trade, post-trade, this full trade life cycle across FX, and where the different capabilities sit in that journey. So it's just making things much more easier to navigate, not only for our customers, but also internally as well, because internally we have to understand our own business and how it all connects together.
And it seems that now that you've put that technology stack in, so you've got uniformity across all of the business and the sub-brands as well, presumably, as you mentioned, the ABM team, that's going to start identifying opportunity between the different sub-brands and supporting sales in more detail, which again is another function of the marketing team. So that sounds again like an very exciting year that you've got ahead of you, and your team have got ahead of them. I'm slightly gobsmacked at the volume of activity that you've both managed to achieve in a year, but also the scale of ambition for LSEG and that you're driving. So thank you so much for coming in today, sharing that journey that you've been on and continue to go on. That's been fascinating. Thank you so much, Amie.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening today to The Growth Engine. If you enjoyed this episode and like to hear more, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, and follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates or on hubagency.co.uk. Thank you, and see you next time.